So we are back on the job, our weekly podcast. This week's guest is the Secretary of Housing for the Commonwealth, Mr. Ed Augustus. Ed, welcome to On the Job.
Thank you, Lou. It's great to be with you.
Yeah. So, Secretary of Housing. Obviously, we hear a lot about the challenges in meeting the demands of housing. You're the guy. What do you see? How do you see it?
Well, we know there's a lot of pressure out there in the housing space. The demographic that we are losing in Massachusetts of folks who are 25 to 45. They're leaving Massachusetts in high numbers. And one of the big drivers of that is the cost of housing. People just are not finding the opportunities to own their own home or rent a home at a price that they can afford that's reasonable for their income and salary. So we just did a housing report, the first comprehensive housing report in the history of the state, and we identified we need to create about 222,000 units of housing over the next 10 years. We've got to pick up the pace in terms of not only the subsidies that we put out there, but some of the policy changes. And Governor Healy did a lot of that in the Affordable Homes Act that she introduced and signed into law about a year ago. We're now almost fully implementing that law, putting the regulations out, the programs in place, and hopefully that's going to help spur some of that production that we haven't been seeing over recent years.
Sure. A lot of it's focused, we know, on affordability. I mean, everything is affordability these days, even people that have good jobs and good careers and two parents working. Affordability is an issue for everybody. What are some of the things, affordable or not, that, our members that can look through and what the governor just signed that'll help them either help create housing or help find housing?
Yep. So I think there's a couple things. One is Massachusetts is blessed. We're the only state in the country to have as much state-owned public housing as we do. We have about 43,000 units that are in 229 cities and towns around the state. There's about 70,000 people who live in those units. And many of those units were built post-World War II for returning veterans, so they're now 70, 80 years old, and they need a lot of capital investment if we're going to keep them online and continue to meet the needs of folks across the state. So we've really prioritized modernizing that public housing stock. In some cases, you really can't modernize it. You need to tear it down and build brand new, and often build, mixed income housing there. So it's not just the affordable or the low-income housing, but there's what we call workforce housing, as well as market rate housing.
What's the difference between the three?
Yeah, the low-income housing, if you're living in public housing, you're going to pay 30% of your income, whatever it is. So if it's a Social Security, a lot of our public housing is for seniors, they may be just living on a Social Security, which could be as low as, $18,000 a year. So by calibrating their rent to 30% of that income, they can live relatively, comfortably in public housing. Whereas if they had to go on to the marketplace to try to find a unit at that cost, it would be very challenging to find. Affordable has different kind of ranges of income. So it can go up to 80% of the area median income. What's the average salary in that area? 120%. So it calibrates to try to capture people who might be, an entry-level school teacher, maybe you're a DPW worker in a community. You make a decent wage, but you don't make enough really to meet what the market is calling for in terms of rent. So us building that affordable housing at different levels allows there to be options for people who do those important jobs that we all count on being done. Somebody plowing the streets when the snow hits, or somebody teaching our kids in schools. We need to make sure there's a place that folks can afford to live in order to do all those jobs for all of us.
Yeah, that's kind of like the workforce housing, just average people looking for some affordability, just basically more housing.
More housing and something that's within their range. I mean, you see some of these areas now in the greater Boston area, it could be $4,000, $5,000. You think about what you'd have to have for an income in order to support that kind of rent. If you're a single mom or a young family just starting out with a couple of kids, it is really hard to be able to make enough to hit those rents and pay for all the other child care and all the other responsibilities that you have.
Yeah, right. What do you the stuff that's in the pipeline now for housing being built and developed? Is it skewed more affordable or more market rate, or is it kind of a balance of both? And what is the kind of secret sauce to make housing get built? Because we're seeing struggles right now of getting projects kind of off the ground and penciled out, to use a developer's terms. You know,
there's only so much the state or local governments can do. Some of it has to do with the bigger macro economic environment. What are interest rates nationally? As we hopefully start to see interest rates come down, I think you will start seeing people selling their homes, people moving. You know, I think about housing as life cycle housing. What you needed when you were just getting out of college or, starting your career, maybe you had a couple of roommates, is different than when you got married, you started a family, and it's different when you're an empty nester and you're downsizing. And we need to make sure there's different types of housing for every stage of life so that when you need to make that move, there's options that you can afford in places that you want to be. And part of that is interest rates. So if folks are sitting on a 3%, mortgage, they want to move, but they don't want to get a 7% interest rate on their next home. So they're going to wait until they see those interest rates come down. So hopefully we're moving in that direction. We'll start seeing some of that. That'll be wind at our back. We saw a lot of inflation related to construction materials post-COVID, and those numbers have not come down. They're not going up at the same rate they were, but they have not come back down to pre-COVID levels. So that's made building the same housing 20, 30, some cases 40% more expensive than it was before the pandemic, and that's just a big hurdle to get over. I'd say the thing we've also been trying to work a lot on is creating zoning that allows for housing. That's what the whole debate about the MBTA Communities Act has been about. If you don't know that you can build something in a town, you're going to go through, planning board meetings and zoning board meetings and zoning board of appeals meetings and town meetings, and 18 months you're spending money, you're doing plans, you're going to those meetings, you're carrying the cost of the property that you want to develop into housing. At the end of the day, if you're not allowed to build it, you've wasted all that time and money. You've got nothing to show for it. So by creating zones around the state, especially zones that are close to transit, so we can encourage people using the investment we've already made in public transportation, and knowing that as of right, you can build that multifamily housing, we're taking a variable out of the equation, which allows developers and the people who invest in development, whether it be a retirement fund or an equity fund. Lots of folks out there have 401ks. Probably part of your 401k is invested in, real estate development, but you want a certain return for that. And you're not going to get that investment if you don't know if you can build that project 18 or 24 months later. So what we're trying to do is provide more certainty that these projects can move forward in places that we should be building housing, like close to transit.
Yeah, NIMBYism is a problem.
Yeah, it's a huge issue. It really is.
It's worse than interest rates. It's worse than
because that
chains.
never goes away. It
Right.
always seems to be there. We just have to raise our voice to people who are leaving our communities or impacted by the housing crisis. Need to show up just as much as the people who are saying no show up.
Yeah,
and that isn't always the case. The yes people don't always show up.
yeah. Growing up and just being around, you always heard of. A big developer wants to come into my town, and we're going to push back. We're going to push back, or they want to build a few houses, and there was always pushback from the neighborhood, no matter what the neighborhood was, no matter what the community was. And then they'd wave this magic wand, or they'd pull out a wild card that was called 40B. Is 40B still a thing?
40B is still a thing. It's probably the most successful housing law in the history of the state. It was put into effect in the late 1960s. And it basically says if a city or town doesn't have 10% of their housing stock affordable, and it has to be deed restricted for affordability, then you have to allow, as of right, some of these projects to come in that have 25% affordability built in. Because if we didn't have that law, there would be some towns that would never have built any additional housing, or certainly not any housing for some of the workers we were talking about earlier, the teachers, the firefighters, the DPW workers. you've got very wonderful, suburban communities that may have 3 or 4 acre lots. And, you're counting on the person who's going to plow your road to live 4 or 5 towns away and show up when the snow flies in order to make sure you can get out of your driveway. We need to have communities that can support not only the folks who are there, but also the workforce that they need to make those communities work. I use this example a lot. You remember during COVID, we were talking about the hospital workers and the nursing home workers and the people who, did the checkout at the grocery stores. We called them heroes, and we were putting up hearts and we were celebrating those people. Well, how about making room for those heroes to live in every city and town in Massachusetts? Because God knows we were really counting on them being there when we all were staying home, abiding by the shutdown, but we still wanted somebody to be checking on mom who was in the nursing home, or somebody sick in a hospital, or when you had to go get your groceries, checking you out, or stocking those shelves. But those kind of wages often, it's hard for them to live near where they work, and so we need to create more of those opportunities.
Right. The community I grew up in, North Shore community, I remember there was a controversial project. Some homeowner, he had a bunch of land that were adjacent to his property. He wanted to build, 5 or 6 buildable lots just to build single-family homes. And the town or the neighborhood, really stonewalled him, and he couldn't do anything. But he waived that 40B card, and they ended up building about 700 units on that site rather than 7 single-family homes. So that didn't work out the way the neighborhood, I think, planned. Most towns getting cute now with 40B, and are they hovering around the 10% so they don't have to face it, or they kind of figure that out?
The vast majority of communities still are not at the 10%. Mm-hmm. If you think about it, late 1960s, that's more than 50 years that they've had, and it's a modest amount, asking for 10%. So 90% of the housing stock can be for gazillionaires.
Sure.
But can 10% be affordable? And again, affordable might be just the ability for your second grade teacher in town to be able to afford to live there. And the vast majority of cities and towns still have not gotten to that 10%. We've got towns who are 1 or 2%.
Oh, yeah.
It tends to be our cities that do more of that work to provide the affordable opportunities. Mm-hmm. Former city manager of Worcester, we had about 14%, which was significantly more affordable housing than most of the suburban communities around Worcester. Mm-hmm. And that's what you see a lot. It tends to be the urban areas that are kind of providing all of that affordable housing that supports the needs not only of their community, but of the communities around them.
Sure. A lot of our members, we're like building trades trade, to get decent wages, we get great benefits. And our guys, our folks, men and women, are still finding it hard to be able to afford to buy a house. And like you said, rents are out of control. What do you see like from the administration? You're part of the Mara Healy's administration. I think she's doing a fabulous job. A lot of the ideas came from you being the Secretary of Housing. What are some of those things that you guys are doing to help affordability for those for like working folks that are working in the trades? What are some of the things that come out that you guys really doubling down on and saying, hey, this is going to help make it affordable?
Yeah, I think part of it is at the end of the day a supply-demand issue,
Sure.
right? So anything that's in short supply and high demand, people can ask for crazy rents or crazy sale prices, and we certainly see that in both the ownership side and the rental side. So part of what we're charged with doing is building more options, more inventory. That way, if you're asking for a crazy rent, I'll go down the street and rent from somebody who's offering a more reasonable rent. Buyers and renters then have choice. They have options. And then we're using the market to really create options for folks and not have all the power concentrated in whoever controls these units. So trying to build more units. And part of that is doing it in somewhat different ways. One of the components of the Affordable Homes Act is the ADUs as of right, accessory dwelling units. Sometimes they were called in-law apartments.
Sure.
Where you might build out a basement, you might build out an attic, a space above a garage, or even sometimes a standalone unit in the backyard if you've got enough space. Oftentimes it could be an elderly parent who's living there. Sometimes it's a disabled child who you want to live independently but still be close to family for help and support. Or sometimes maybe it's an older couple who are living on a fixed income and they want a little extra income to keep up with the taxes and keep up with the home insurance. By creating this additional unit, they can do that. But that's also another unit of housing. Maybe somebody who's in that big 3-bedroom house, they're by themselves now, their spouse has passed away, they want to stay in town, but there's no place to downsize to. These ADUs create those opportunities, and now that big house becomes available for a growing family who needs the extra bedrooms and the outside space. So some of the policies, I think, are trying to create through direct state subsidy, but sometimes just by changing policy and allowing individual homeowners to say, I think this makes sense for me, I'm going to do this. And previous to that, there were a lot of barriers and hurdles that were put in place by local governments that made it impossible in some places to build that, and now we've removed those restrictions.
Sure. I know everybody's got someone that has an apartment in the basement or whatever. Is it the ADU law, is it just as simple as making an illegal apartment now a legal apartment?
It depends how it's laid out. You still have to make sure you're meeting some basic life safety
stuff like
codes
that,
and things of that nature. But the law says that it's as of right. So if you own a home and you want to add up to a 900 square foot ADU, the town cannot put any unreasonable restrictions on that. Now, there may be some basic requirements. If there's septic there, you've got to have the right capacity if you have another unit, et cetera. But you can't just arbitrarily add these things that often were used as backdoor ways to prevent them from happening in the first place. You can't. If you're close to transit, I think it's a half a mile of transit, you can't put parking requirements. We know a lot of people who live in the ADUs tend not to have cars anyways because they're older. Or so we've kind of learned some of the tricks that people use to prevent ADUs from happening, and in the law try to remove some of those barriers. And California did this a number of years ago. They created tens of thousands of units across the state that just created options. So if you live near a college or university, maybe you rent out that ADU and you're bringing in a little extra income, which creates options for folks.
Yeah, I was going to say, not just elderly or disabled kids. It's college kids or getting out of college, or young couples that are just starting out in life.
Exactly right.
I mean, that's how my parents started off. 50, 60 years ago, they rented a room or a little apartment upstairs in my grandmother's house.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And that turned into an illegal apartment for years. You know what I mean? Are we seeing like one families turn into two families? That's those types of things.
Well, that's one of the things we're trying to encourage in some communities as part of their way to comply with the MBTA Communities Act, have done that. So Somerville, they basically say if you have any single-family lot, you can build, I think it's 2 or 3 units on that. So you could theoretically tear down a single-family home and build 3 units on that same lot. And, overnight it's not going to create thousands of units, but over time you'll start replacing and you get more density. And part of the logic there is you've already got the infrastructure built. There's already a street. There's a water and sewer connection. There's a sidewalk there. And by gently adding one more unit to it, you don't need a ton of additional infrastructure. You've got people often, walkable to shops and restaurants and public transportation, all the things you want, versus taking some pristine field far away from transit and creating homes there and having to bring all the infrastructure into those locations. Can we gently add density in some of the existing areas across the state?
It's kind of become a phenomenon on like TikTok and some of these videos, is these tiny homes.
Yeah.
Is putting a tiny home in your backyard where your shed is that like an option as part of an ADU?
You could call it a tiny home or you could call it an ADU. It's in many cases the same thing where, and I've been in some of these standalone ADUs in backyards, and they are gorgeous.
Yeah.
Again, you can design it. It could be a studio, it could be a 1-bedroom. They're often a lot of light. They're usually one level. So if it's a person who, wants to age in place, they don't have to worry about stairs and climbing up and down. It's more manageable to maintain and to access. And a lot of times you can have a lot of input in how it's designed so it can fit your needs and what your interests are. So I think we're going to see a lot more of those options, and we can call them tiny homes or we could call them ADUs. But people don't often want like the huge houses because huge houses mean you collect a lot of junk.
Yeah.
You know, I think any of us who have a little extra space tend to fill it with stuff. And sometimes, you know, especially younger people, I think, like to have a more minimalist kind of setup, which is probably good.
Yeah, I mean, just the maintenance of a big
Yeah.
house.
Yep.
You know, the cost of heat and electricity these days doesn't help. You want to have a bigger house. So downsizing is kind of very popular in some of these smaller houses and tiny homes, or you know, I know friends that got garages and got sheds that are like the man town they hang out in, and you can move into some of these spaces. You know what I mean?
It's incredible what, you know, you can turn some. We're going to do a competition where we get designers and architects to show how you can take an old garage, how you could do a standalone, a basement or an attic, and what you can actually turn it into. And I think
that's a great idea.
when people actually can see what some of these things look like and feel like, I think we'll get a lot more folks to start to, hey, maybe that's an option for us.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something we should do, because it's not just like your old kind of, you know, cellar with some shag carpet on the floor and some wood paneling on the walls. Some of these look like a really nice apartment the way they're designed these days.
Yeah, I mean, and if you got a 2-car garage and it's just filled with junk, to clean it out and to make a little apartment in there and to get some extra income. I mean, who can't use extra income
Exactly.
these days? You know, even if it's for immediate family.
Yep.
You get an adult child that's trying to start out in the world that just can't quite make it yet because he's got student loans or whatever the deal is. That's a great idea to kind of show you what you can do. That'd be a great showing examples.
Yeah, there's nothing better than visualizing it. It's one thing to talk about it, but it's another thing to see it. And, you know, to the extent that people can walk through these, they're now doing almost like boat shows, and at home, a lot of home shows now, they're actually showing these ADUs so people can go in and experience it and feel it. And I think as people do that, as they share it on social media, you're just going to see more and more people pick up on it.
Yeah, yeah. I know the affordability issue has made van living kind of chic, right? There used to be a skit on Saturday Night Live. You lived in a van down by the river because you're a loser. Now, if you're living in a van down by the river, you're doing okay, right?
As somebody 6'6", I don't think van living is probably an option for
Maybe
me.
not,
but
it's just kind of funny how the tide has turned on living expectations and what's acceptable these days.
For
right?
sure.
Yeah. Too funny. So people probably wondering, you know, what's the Secretary of Housing doing at Local 103 and hanging out with the business manager. And we're in this program called the CAP Collaborative. I know Ira Jackson reached out to me. I'm sure him or George had reached out to you. How did you get involved in the CAP? And tell me about how you're feeling about it.
Yeah, no, it's a great experience. They had invited me to speak to some of the earlier cohorts. As you know, different every week they have different speakers come in, and sometimes it's folks from the media, sometimes it's folks from the business community or government sector, or kind of a topic area, and you bring folks from that field in. So I had gone in and spoken to some of the earlier CAP collaboratives, and you know, Ira reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you be willing to do this?" I said, "I'd love to do it. It's a lot of time commitment," which it is, but I made the commitment, and I'm so glad I did. I think that's been the universal experience from everybody I've talked to in our cohort as well as earlier. It's a big time commitment, but it really is worth it. You'll learn a lot. The relationships that you're able to build, the amount of time you spend with each other. You and I are doing this shadowing component, which is part of it for everybody. And the insights, the ability to walk in somebody else's shoes for a day and understand that perspective and you know, come to respect that work and how important it is. I found it very valuable, and I think everybody I've talked to has found it the same.
Yeah, as have I. The CAP Collaborative, for those that don't know, it's kind of like a business and government program for folks to learn more about how the other half lives and how to be more successful in your. And now they've added a kind of a labor component to it for which I've gotten a lot out of being able to be a labor voice to go and talk to folks from government like yourself or folks from business, whether they're from Eversource or Wentworth or you know, any other organization, and just kind of offer labor perspective. And I've gotten a whole lot out of it. I really appreciate, it's 7 or 8 evenings, so it is a big time commitment. But the bonds you'll be able, and the relationships you're able to build, like who would ever put me and you together?
Yeah.
And here we are. We spent the last couple of days together.
Yeah.
Got to go to a groundbreaking out in the Worcester area. Go to a couple of housing developments and see kind of what the real challenges are from your perspective. My perspective is, hey, you're building housing, you got to build a union. Let's go.
Yeah.
And I see some of the real challenges that you're faced with as the Secretary of Housing and trying to be under so much pressure to get more housing to market. And then you get to kind of see my perspective a little bit on what we're fighting for.
Yeah, making sure that folks, have the opportunity to work and have the opportunity to have good wages and pensions and safe working conditions.
Yeah.
And, not only the workers, but the family behind the workers who are depending on them.
Yeah.
And getting that understanding and perspective has been, invaluable to me in the
Yeah.
work I do.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of our members, we build a lot of housing.
Yeah,
And a lot of it that we build, our folks can't afford to live in it.
exactly. And that has to change.
Yeah.
If Massachusetts is going to stay the great state that we are, if we're going to be able to keep particularly our younger folks, that can't be true. Teachers, electricians,
Yeah.
Researchers, whatever category they may be, they all have to be able to find a place to live and afford here in Massachusetts, because that's what our economy requires, is that kind of diversity of jobs, of fields. That's what makes Massachusetts great, but we've got to keep it, because if we don't, we're going to lose that edge.
Yeah, we definitely can't lose that. We got to keep people here for sure. Part of our shadowing days, the last couple of days, you got to come on to a job site this morning, and you got to tour our apprentice training facility across the parking lot. What did you think about both?
The job site was just really eye-opening, huge. I think it was 280 some odd units being built in Quincy. Really impressive, the complexities of not only what your workers were doing, but what they're doing at the same time. Their other trades are working all in and around them, and making sure that the sequencing and chronology and the work is able to be done in a way that doesn't have everybody banging into each other is just impressive. And then really understanding why that's possible, which is the apprenticeship program that you have and the training academy here. They're not just walking on the job, what do I do now? They've spent literally years in the classroom and in supervision on the job site, getting those skills. And, I think one of the things that impressed me was the changing nature of electrical work. How many different systems are now powered by digital or need electrical components, and it's not just putting in the lights and putting in the sockets. It is the security system. It's the fire alarm system. It's controlling the lights and the shades and sometimes your appliances and everything else, the complexity of that. So it's not something that you just learn and then you go do for 30 years. Yeah. You literally got to be learning every day you're on the job for your entire career.
Yeah, the integration part of it, tying it all together. Someone comes in with a laptop and programs everything.
It's incredible.
It really is good. The industry has come a long way just from building, not just building housing anymore. Now you got to integrate all these systems into your laptop or your security system. So when you walk in the room, the lights come on or the heat goes down or up or whatever. I noticed too today, we walked the job and then we walked the school. A lot of stuff that kids are learning in the school, we saw actually being done on the job.
Yep.
Which
is, I think, why the program seems so effective. It's not like theoretical stuff here and then go the real world out there. They're so integrated. What you're doing, you're physically doing a lot of those things in a safe learning environment, and then seeing how it's applied in the field and getting the opportunity to do that under the supervision of more senior folks. And, I think if you think about it, that's what doctors do, right?
Sure.
Doctors are, doing a lot of classwork, but then they're doing residency. They're working with other doctors. You don't just let them go into do surgery. So the principle is the same for a lot of different fields, and I think you guys have really created a model here that's just impressive. and again, keeping up with that sophistication, because it's not a static field, no pun intended. It's a very dynamic field, and you better have a system to keep up with it, or you're going to be left behind.
Yeah, I tell a lot of first-time apprentices that are new to the industry. They might be working on a casino, they might be working on a sports or an athletic complex like TD Garden or Fenway Park, or building a lab or a high-rise condo building or an office building. And I always tell them, like, learn residential, because that'll always, it'll always kind of steady the highs and the lows of the industry, because the industry is all peaks and valleys. It's busy, it's busy, it's busy. It's slow, it's slow, it's slow.
Yeah.
We're seeing that right now. And the residential stuff, if you know how to do residential work, you'll always work. There's always people that need an electrician to do their residences and stuff,
No, I think that sounds like it's good advice. Not only you're building more housing, you're rehabbing stuff, you're modernizing, you're updating, you're retrofitting a housing. And if I think about the past 20 or 30 years, you've had big pushes with casinos, you've had big biotech industry periods of investment, and then that kind of slows down for a period. So I think it's probably good advice. Everybody's going to need a home.
Yeah.
These other things come and go in waves. So
and most of our smaller contractors that become union contractors are born from their ability to do residential. They do residential work, whether they're doing it after work or on the weekends. Then they kind of graduate to maybe doing it full time, to turning in themselves into their own contractor, and then maybe graduating into another sector that they built off of knowing how to do residential. So whether you're a plumber, electrician, or carpenter, residential is key to your career in the trades. I've always found, and there's a need for it, as you said.
100%. I mean, most of us at one time or another have been trying to find an electrician to put something together in our house or fix something or do it. And, having that pool of folks available out there is always in demand.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Just backing up a little bit, your career in government is you've been a long time, and you're from the Worcester area. You were the Worcester city manager. You worked for a congressman. Tell us a little bit about where you've come from and your path to working for Governor Healy as the housing secretary.
Yeah, I've kind of had an interesting career. I born and raised in Worcester. Got elected to the Worcester School Committee when I was just 23 years old. Always had an interest in government and politics, and got involved early. And it's like probably with a lot of folks' careers, one opportunity kind of created the next opportunity. So I was on the school committee for a couple of terms, then Bill Clinton got elected president. I got invited to go to Washington to be part of the Clinton administration at the Department of Education in D.C., which I was 28 years old, moving to D.C., excitement, kind of living in a different city for the first time in my life, and being part of that and traveling around the country. It was really incredible. Got a chance to move up Independence Ave in Washington and work on Capitol Hill with Congressman Jim McGovern as his chief of staff for 6 years. Then got elected to the Massachusetts Senate, did a couple terms there. Got involved in a lot of kind of, healthcare. We did healthcare reform that became the kind of predicate for Obamacare, for the national healthcare reform, but we did it here in Massachusetts first. And then 8 years as city manager of Worcester, which is my hometown, and the ability to kind of give back. We negotiated to bring the Pawtucket Red Sox and turn them into the Worcester Red Sox, build Polar Park, a lot of development that happened in and around that, housing and commercial. And then Governor Healy asked me if I'd be the first housing secretary, as she had prioritized creating a standalone secretariat to deal with housing because of the housing crisis. And that's been a great experience working with her and my colleagues in the cabinet, passing the Affordable Homes Act, and now getting a chance to take those ideas that got turned into legislation that are now law and turn them hopefully into homes, which is what we're working on doing now.
It's awesome. Worcester's got a soft spot in our heart here in Boston. It's our sister local out there, Local 96, and two biggest cities in New England mirror a lot of each other and feed off each other. I know a lot of our members worked on the new Polar Park for the Woo Sox, and it was a very exciting project.
That's awesome.
I got to tour. It was under construction, and I haven't been to a game there. Get out there and get to
Oh,
a game.
you gotta check it out.
It's
yeah.
a an impressive little park that is, you know.
It really is. It was rated by one of the baseball magazines as the best AAA ballpark in the United States.
Wow. Yeah.
The same woman, Janet Marie Smith, who is the architect who did the renovations at Fenway. She designed Camden Yards in Baltimore and Petco Park in San Diego. She designed Polar Park. So it really is part of kind of that integration of a ballpark with a neighborhood like Fenway is. As opposed to building it on the outskirts of the town, surrounded by parking.
All
Really,
open spaces in the park, and makes it an open field and not like you're sitting.
It's really a
obstructed view.
special place. Yeah, we've had 2 million visitors
wow.
to the park in the first 5 years. So
I've been to LaLasha Field up in Lowell.
Yep.
There's a nice little field as too, and it reminded me a lot of Polar Park. Polar Park's really a really nice little park.
Yeah, it
you
is.
guys did a great job with that, and that's revitalizing the whole Kelly Square in downtown Worcester, isn't it?
I mean, thousands of units of housing have built around Polar Park with views looking into the park, which is kind of cool. A lot of which have retail, restaurants, and entertainment venues on the first floor. So all that created jobs. It created more housing, and Worcester's population is growing. It's 210,000 people. It's by far the second largest city in New England. Bigger than Providence, Hartford, and growing significantly.
Yeah. So I knew you really had a storied and really great career in government, but I didn't know that you worked for Bill Clinton in the Clinton administration. Yeah, that's awesome. Tell me a little bit about that. I want to hear more about it.
It was incredible, like especially being at that stage of my life and career, being young and moving to Washington, and it was a brand new administration, so there was all these other young kind of politically active and interested people from around the country who moved to D.C. to be part of this new administration. And, you get a chance to go to I was on the White House lawn when Nelson Mandela arrived after he had been let go from 30 years of incarceration. I was on the White House lawn when they signed the peace agreement with Israel and the Palestinian PLO. So just being proximate to those historic moments and to see some of those things was just kind of amazing experience. And, it seems like a million years ago now, but everything was possible when you were that young and starting with a new administration.
My experience, obviously, age myself here, but Bill Clinton was the first presidential election that I was able to vote in as age. So there was kind of like there's something romantic about politics back then when you first get to vote. And, Bill Clinton being that guy, he just had this magnetic personality. He wasn't, a Dick Nixon, stone face kind of whatever. He was a romantic guy. He was a really guy that's easy to like and speak, and he spoke with that Southern drawl. And how was that working for Bill Clinton?
I mean, it was amazing because he could connect with people. He was genuinely interested in people, so he was always engaging, and really listening. And now I think back, and when he became president, is so much younger than I am right now. And that's kind of crazy when you think about it. But that period, I think, was a period of great optimism about, what government can do, what we can do together as a country and stuff. And, that can-do kind of attitude, which was infectious.
Yeah, no, definitely. I got a chance to meet him one time. He came to Local 103.
Oh, wow, yeah.
It was during the 2016 campaign. He was traveling the country. Obviously, we know how that turned out, but having him come in and engage with everybody and speak and talk to,
he still got it.
He still got it. Yeah, he really does. Yeah. He's a very magnetic personality
and a brilliant guy. Like his ability to kind of know what's going on in any corner of the world, take whatever cutting edge things are happening and translate it in a way that's understandable and accessible. It's a gift.
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to go and visit the White House and how impressive it is. And when we were doing our tour at the JTC earlier, I pointed out a demo for EV charging stations that our apprentices built and were able to bring to the White House.
Incredible.
And demonstrate to the President of the United States. And the opportunity, I remember telling those kids, like, this isn't something that happens every day.
God.
Like, this is like once in a lifetime. You're going to remember this. Take these pictures and frame them, hang them in your house, and you're going to be explaining to your grandchildren Do you have any stories like that being at the White House with the president?
I mean, I can remember when I worked for Jim McGovern, and Jim McGovern was very active in anti-hunger programs. He still is. He had interned for George McGovern, who ran for president in 1972, who had been the Clinton's American ambassador to the World Food Program in Rome, and had come up with this new idea for buying, excess farm products and turning it into school lunch programs around the world, and wanted to pitch it to the president. So I went with Jim McGovern and George McGovern in the cabinet room of the White House with a lot of the president's cabinet and senior advisors. And then the president walked in and sat down and, wanted to hear the program, and it ended up turning Bill Clinton ended up turning that program into a reality, which existed for a number of years. Just recently has stopped existing, unfortunately. But seeing that idea, Clinton immediately being able to kind of understand it, get it, process it, realize this is going to help farmers, this is going to help us with our foreign policy, feeding poor people around the world, which will build goodwill for the United States, and then turned it into a reality. And millions of people ended up getting fed through that program. They may never know how it ever came to be or whose idea it was, but they benefited from that, and America benefited from that. And just being a fly on the wall, if you will, to see how that idea got pitched to the right people who could turn it into a reality. It's kind of magical.
Oh, that is absolutely. What a sense of pride that must be.
Oh, it's incredible.
I mean? Yeah, the highest levels of government in the free world.
So,
you
it's
adopted an idea that you had.
And turn it into. So to me, it's like, when you have the opportunity to have roles like this, obviously completely different scale, but you have an opportunity to make a difference in people's lives in ways you may never realize. You may never see their face or know their name. They may never know how it came to happen, but they will benefit from it. And to me, that's, at the end of the day, that's what public service is about. It's being responsible for some period of time, for some public responsibility, and trying to do good, trying to make it better than you found it, trying to, lift people's burden. And, having seen those opportunities to do that, you try to figure out how do you do that in your own little way, in your own kind of little world.
Sure. Public service, the term doesn't give it the credence that it deserves, whether it's serving as the business manager of your local union or the city manager or school committee or now as the Secretary of Housing. Giving back is such a rewarding part of having a career in public service or any type of public servant.
It really is. It's something I mentioned at the CAP Collaborative. It's like, how often in our life have we seen something and said, geez, somebody should do something about that?
Right.
Panhandlers on the street, or encampment, or litter on the street, or, some, environmental problems. Somebody should do something. In a democracy, that somebody is us,
right,
working together through our government to do something about that, solve our common problems. And as Pollyannic as that sounds, I still believe in that. I still believe there's a role for government to do that, to solve problems, to make people's lives better, to protect people. And at the end of the day, that's what we're all trying to do.
Yeah. That's the term. You know what you should do? Like, now we're in those positions, and hey, we're doing it. We're trying to do it. Help us out here.
Yeah, exactly.
Jump in, get involved. You know what I mean?
Everybody's got a critique and a criticism, and hey, you missed that, or you could have done that better. It's like, jump in. The water's fine. Help us pull this.
That's right.
Pull this boat.
Yeah, helping people is one of the most rewarding parts of the job that I have, and I'm certainly sure it's.
I was watching you do it when we walked in here. Like, some of your members, some of your retirees had questions or problems, and they were all grabbing you, looking for, how do I do this? Who do I talk to about this? And so you do that for your membership day in and day out.
Yeah, it's the best part of the job, for sure.
I'm sure.
Helping people, whether it's help them find a job, help them get a project permitted, help them find housing in some cases, or just help them navigate their benefits. It's
all matters.
Service matters. It 100% does. Well, Ed, this has been great.
Yeah, awesome.
You know what I mean? This is awesome. I'm glad you came on the podcast. We were able to do this for a few minutes. I know we still got a few weeks left of the CAP Collaborative, and I'm really looking forward to spending more time with you. But thanks for coming on our podcast.
Likewise. I hope I don't I don't end your podcast career. Hopefully, this doesn't end it. This is just the early on, and many more to come.
Yeah,
so
I hope
thanks
so.
for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm hopefully getting better at it. It's still the early phases, and the jury's out maybe, but having good guys like you to come on and talk about all the good work you're doing,
Thank you.
I think matters, and my members love to hear it. So thanks so much.
I appreciate the chance.
Yeah,
Thank you.
good stuff.